Revenge, sunshine.
What a magnificent second season. Daredevil was my favourite new show of last year, and its second season showed no sign of slowing down. And learning beforehand of appearances from both the Punisher, my favourite Marvel character, and Elektra only served to heighten my excitement. And I am so happy to say that it did not disappoint. Throwing in two huge Marvel characters into this already formed universe, you will be right to feel a little sceptical, wondering if they could pull it off without the show feeling disjointed or overshadowing Daredevil himself. But a word that I feel is a resounding success this season is flow. Every story, whether it be the initial Punisher arc, Elektra's return to town, Fisk's rise to power within his prison walls, or the Hand bringing war to Hell's Kitchen, every one of them felt right. The whole structure felt right. They were coherent, smooth, and each of the stories fit neatly into place. The action and acting all around was again superb. Charlie Cox was great and continued to grow as our lead. Karen's role in the show got even deeper, as she made it her mission to find out the truth about what really happened to Frank Castle, and Foggy was left near enough by himself to keep Nelson and Murdock alive and afloat. Oh, and somehow they might have just done it. They may have topped that epic hallway scene back at the beginning of Season 1. Widely regarded as Daredevil's best fight scene to date, you wondered whether or not if the writers and producers had the audacity to even attempt to hurdle over a bar that was already very highly raised. And did they give it a shot? You're damn right they did. Tremendous action again is what we got. The scene ushered the same raw intensity as the first. The camera panned, spanning multiple levels of an apartment block and stairwells, as Matt, still with a gun duct taped to one hand and a chain to the other, took on wave after wave of the Dogs of Hell gang members. And you have to remember as well, he'd just recovered from being knocked out and fighting Frank. But his perseverance was admirable, especially towards the end of the fight when it looked like again he had nothing left in the tank. For a second I thought that Frank might make the save, but no, Matt won the day all by himself. So I ask you, which hallway scene did you enjoy the most? It's always great when some familiar faces return, so to have a handful of them here with the likes of Claire, Melvin, Stick, Ellison and even Nobu helped give the show a reinforcement of friendly faces. Now, there's a name I've left off that list there purely because it was up in the air whether or not we were going to see him. Wilson Fisk's involvement heading into Season 2 was always going to be a big question. I never thought he was going to escape yet, it would be far too soon for that, but I hoped deep down that we'd get at least a one-off appearance. And credit Netflix for this because they kept it very well under wraps. What we got was far better and more than I could have hoped for. Not only did Vincent D'Onofrio reprise his role as the menacing Kingpin, we got a multi-episode arc watching his rise to power in prison, which linked directly with Frank Castle's quest for vengeance. Frank and Fisk's exchange together was a huge surprise. Fisk's plan to try and get him killed failed. He didn't believe the stories that one man was capable of such violence and destruction, but after seeing it firsthand, he couldn't let that talent go to waste. No, there was never any parting agreement between the pair, not in a long shot, but Castle punishing all of his targets would actually help Fisk in a way, and he saw that opportunity, so he thought best to let this special talent walk away free. As I said, it was far more than I ever expected, and it linked back with the main story in a way that made perfect sense. Now all that remains is to wait and see when Wilson Fisk, not if, when, he will escape the confinements of prison and rise once again. So where did we start off in the premiere? Following on from Fisk's arrest at the end of last year, Matt still works night and day as the devil of Hell's Kitchen to make his city a safer place. There's never any shortage of criminal scum, but with Fisk now gone, the remaining gangs in the city looked to collect the shattered pieces of power from the void that is now left behind. The cartel, bikers, Irish, all of them were looking to claim as many pieces as they could. The problem for everyone was there was now a one-man army in town. Now before I talk about this portrayal here, I will tell you straight, the Punisher is my favourite Marvel character. And yes, the Punisher films we've had over the years haven't exactly hit the same note with everyone, but out of what we got, I enjoyed Thomas Jane's Punisher in 2004. I liked that film and thought that Thomas Jane suited the role very well. And I think he showed his love for the character with his Punisher short, Dirty Laundry. Seriously, if you haven't seen that yet, go and watch it. Believe me, if you're a Punisher fan, you will not regret it. Now, special credit needs to be reserved for Jon Bernthal. Bravo, sir. Bravo. Even already, his portrayal of Frank Castle has been applauded and met with universal praise. And honestly, he deserves it. I was fully on board since the first time we laid eyes on him. Where there were a few episodes of build-up towards the big reveal of Fisk in Season 1, Season 2 wasted no time in bringing the Punisher straight into the fold. The Punisher being brought into this world, it fits, it feels right, and it works perfectly with the tone of the show, if not making it darker. Adding an anti-hero, a character who is able to mercilessly kill without question, added a greater level of depth that began to reflect back on Matt himself. Matt's methods are not working as of late, and the Punishers are. Matt faces a lot of moral choices this year, and the Punisher is someone who does not hold back. Matt gets a stark reminder of that when he faces off against him for the first time in the premiere. And this right here, this is one of my favourite lines from the season.
You know the one thing that you just can't see? You know you're one bad day away from being me.
Without question, there were a number of scenes throughout the Punisher's story this year where Bernthal absolutely knocked it out of the park. My noteworthy moments in particular are the pawn shop scene, his own brutal bloody hallway fight, and an exceptional exchange between a wounded Frank and Matt in the cemetery. And of course, his finale ending appearance. Now I remember his first solo scene so vividly. He was on the market for that police radio in the pawn shop, and after he got what he was after, he was silently on his way. But that owner decided to take things a step too far. And as soon as that owner outed himself as the same sadistic scum that Frank aims to put down, he turned around, picked up a bat, and did what he does best. It showcased his inability to let any old scumbag slide, and it was one of the first real times we clearly got to see this version of Frank Castle. And since that whole scene was so well done, it immediately had me on board for the casting and the story. He was set up initially as an antagonist to Daredevil, but you slowly began to get deeply engrossed in the Punisher's story. We learnt that his family was slaughtered in the midst of a massacre set up by someone who went by the name of the Blacksmith. We listened to his tragic story from his own mouth when he sat with Matt alone in that cemetery. His story of arriving back from overseas and into his daughter's arms was pulling at your heartstrings. Hearing him say how he was scared to see them again, and that he was so tired his daughter was the one who held him up. It was an amazing, amazing performance by Jon Bernthal there, capping off one of, if not the, best episode of the season. And it would have helped change many people's initial views of the Punisher away from a gun-shooting maniac to a wounded and avenging vigilante. His story was thoroughly captivating. So over the course of the season and Frank's trial, we finally learn the identity of the Blacksmith. Clancy Brown is a legendary old school actor, and I was smiling the second when he was introduced during Frank's trial. I just think he's an awesome actor and a massive presence, but more often than not, the guy is usually a villain. And that didn't change here. Frank had grown to care for Karen over the course of the season, and watched over her on more than one occasion. Towards the end, he saved her from the Colonel, and he exacted his revenge. I did wonder though whether or not the Colonel would escape to set up a possible Season 1 storyline for a Punisher series, but once a hole was put through the side of his head, that theory was blown away. Granted, the reveal was a little out of the blue. There was never really any explanation to why the Colonel turned to the drug trade, and he vanishes after the trial to only reappear as the man who caused it all. But here's hoping if we do get a Punisher show, a little more of that backstory can be explained and thawed out, so we can get a little bit more information. And the fact that we got to see Frank fully suit up in the season finale, skull vest and all, left me with a massive grin on my face, and it gave fans such as myself exactly what we wanted to see. Now, whilst the Punisher story spanned throughout the whole season with his initial arc taking over the first 4 episodes, around 1/3 of the way through, another big character also entered the fray. Matt's old flame Elektra was back in town and causing trouble like she always has. The casting again was top notch. Elodie Young fit Elektra so well. She had the perfect mix of beauty, danger and playfulness, and I really enjoyed the flashbacks to show us how she and Matt came to know one another and eventually to love one another. Their chemistry was on point and you could see that they had an instant attraction to one another. Whether they were infiltrating a Yakuza-guarded gallery, fighting the Hand, or finding what looked to be a bottomless pit, their chemistry together is what made them such an excellent duo. Matt was very blunt and distant with Elektra at first. She left him all of a sudden all that long ago. So for her to reappear back in his life again and be sat in his living room was a big obstacle for him to overcome. And I think that's what annoyed Matt the most. Her constantly bringing up how good of a team they are annoyed him deep down because he knew it was true. You didn't have to look at them long to tell that they looked like an instant match. Now Matt's old mentor Stick returned once again to remind him of the impending war that was coming to Hell's Kitchen. And that war was happening now. He revealed himself to be the Chaste, the leader of a group destined to battle the forces of the Hand. Now, who remembers Nobu? The samurai ninja warrior guy that kicked Matt's ass and burned to death last season? Well, he's back. Stick's story of them possessing the power of immortality seemed to be true, and Nobu brought along with him his army of silent ninjas. And that pretty much is what the story for the most of the final episodes was revolved around. Elektra was revealed to be the Hand's ultimate weapon, Black Sky, a revelation which Stick had known his entire life. He had protected her, trained her and wanted her to be used for good. So when the Hand came knocking for her loyalty, thankfully she declined, siding with Matt and Stick. There was certainly a more supernatural element that began to creep into the show towards the back end, and it will be interesting to explore further. We didn't really get a full understanding of what the Hand was up to, with the giant hole in the ground and its draining of those victims, but I'm assuming that that device or such is the thing that resurrected Nobu. Now on the topic of immortals, I'm pretty sure Nobu is fully dead this time. If Highlander taught me anything, it's the key to defeating an immortal warrior is by chopping off his head. And that's exactly what Stick did. So I don't expect to see Nobu rise from the grave a second time. But who knows? My overall verdict for the second season of Daredevil is a solid 9 out of 10. Now, does Daredevil's second season best its first? For me, yes, it does. Probably just about. My reasoning for that is not only do we get the Punisher, Elektra, a returning Fisk, Stick, the Hand, and a resurrected Nobu. We got a story which interlinked all of them together in a magnificent way. There was only on 1 or 2 occasions where I felt some of the scenes were a little bit muddled. The one sticking out in my head now is where Elektra was at the airport and it suddenly cut away from her when she was about to have that fight. And also, story-wise, Fisk was clearly the big bad throughout season 1. You never really got that this year. At first, you're led to believe it'll be the Punisher, but as you get deeper into the season, Nobu's resurrection and the Hand are the front and centre for the back third of the season. Either way, the action and fight choreography, especially in the hallway scene 2.0, and the brutal nature of the Punisher was excellent, and it did not hold back. It's the Punisher done right. It's Elektra done right. And the stories from season 1 with Fisk and the Hand's War continued, evolved and expanded in a natural way. Standout episodes include episode 3, where Matt learnt a lot about the Punisher whilst he's chained up, which of course included the new hallway scene. Then there was probably my favourite episode in number 4, where Frank is captured and tortured by the remainder of the Irish mob, and that is also the first time we got to see Elektra. That shotgun shot to the face though, damn, that was full on. That is the Punisher alright. And it was capped off with a stunning monologue about his family. Truly heart-wrenching stuff. The trial episode as well, number 8, was very gripping, and it topped it all off with the surprise return of Wilson Fisk. Then a natural lead-in, episode 9, acted as Fisk's episode where we've got fully caught up on him, where he had a unique run-in with the Punisher. And of course, we had the finale, which capped itself off with Elektra's sacrifice, Frank's Punisher skull, and Matt/Stick's victory, for now at least, over the Hand. Now, there were a couple of relationships that were structured throughout this season which I thought were very well handled. If I understand correctly, the Matt and Karen one is a relationship which happened in the comics, and they did at least partially begin to delve into that this year. But I thought that Karen had a much stronger connection built throughout this year's run. Her bond with Frank was very investing and had plenty of great resolutions. Frank saved her on more than one occasion, showing the viewer he is more than just a killing machine, and Karen seems to relate to him in a way, possibly because of a hidden dark past that she may be involved in. Maybe that's why she was so persistent over proving Frank was not insane, trying to find rationality in what he does. As I've said, Frank Castle was set up initially as the main antagonist, but as the episodes went by, you slowly began to get really into his redemption arc, and with Karen helping him along the way, it was a satisfying resolution to what I hope will lead into a Punisher show of its own. Which leads into the third character of the trio. Foggy was a little indifferent for Matt this year. They spent most of their time falling out, and I mean, Foggy was right most of the time, I'll give him that, but Matt began to get sick and tired of being told not to be who he wants to be. Foggy's courage was admirable though, whether he was conning the apartment building so he could scan the rooftops for an injured Matt, or literally running into the danger zone to find his friend, his actions showed him to be fiercely loyal, and there's a reason why Nelson comes before Murdock. Now I haven't mentioned Reyes, who was a constant thorn in Nelson and Murdock's side. She played the part well, acting as the big bad in a little bit of a way, lying, manipulating and abusing her position of power, and it wasn't hard to believe that eventually she would get her comeuppance. And that, she definitely did. Now with some big hitters joining the ranks, you might have thought that Matt would have gotten sidelined, and while the Punisher was my favourite character in this year's season, Matt and Elektra's relationship was an essential part and core of this season. Matt's love for her at the end was a nice payoff for their story together. Their talk about running away with one another was from the heart, they meant it, which made her death all the more saddening. Now from one of the final shots of the season, it was clear that the Hand dug up Elektra's body, still intent on using her as a weapon. Now I have no idea where this is going to go, but if I had to hazard a guess, that chamber coffin thing that they put Elektra inside at the end is going to bring her back to life, the same thing that they probably used on Nobu. I imagine that she won't be the same, at least for a while, and that she will be the black sky weapon that the Hand always wanted her to be. And I expect it will be down to Matt to try and stop and save her. And with regards to Fisk, remember what he said. He is coming after Matt Murdock, to dismantle him and all he holds dear. So the question remains, when will he be free? As always, thank you very much for watching. Please leave a like, comment and subscribe if you enjoyed my review. Let me know what you thought of Daredevil's second season down in the comments, and who your favourite character this year was, and I'll see you on the next one.
See you around, Red.